Welcome to another episode of Timeless Wisdom, Modern Mind. I hope that you have enjoyed the previous episodes as I begin to develop this way that I think, the way that I read and study, and then in essence try to simplify it so that I can use it in my life or whenever I do coaching on storytelling or storytelling workshops. I don't confuse people with the whole complete thing that I've learned. I make it so it's practical for them to consume. Which brings me to today's episode. The title is this: The Sophistication of Simple, which it's funny, it's an oxymoron. Sophistication is such a big word. Simple is kind of what I'm trying to get at. And I hope that you enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a message if you've learned, if it's helped you just kind of expand your mind a little bit, or just motivated you to want to gain in wisdom in your life. And so I am your host, Sam Iscabel, and let's jump right into it. Most people think that genius is about how much you can complicate a topic, but true mastery is how much you can strip away. If you can't explain your mountaintop idea, your huge idea to people in the valley, people that think a little more simple, your insight, it isn't a gift, right? It's a secret. It's something too complicated. It, in essence, entertains you, and it's too much for those around you. And the key is that it doesn't even matter how much we know. It's a matter of how much we can share and how much we can teach people. So we're going to talk about several things just to understand this idea. The burden of the bridge. Intellectual depth is useless without the empathetic bridge required to share it. It is important that we move from ignorance to complexity, but the final boss of intelligence is simplicity. So to knowing a little bit, to knowing a lot, right? To beginning to learn a topic, to mastering a topic, in both of those aspects, mastering something kind of puts you alone on an island. You truly understand and can only talk with those that truly understand at your level. And that's very complex. And then on the ignorance side, on the beginning part of learning something, there's a lot of people there, but everyone is barely tipping their toes into whatever they are trying to learn. And so those two areas, that the left side and the right side, the ignorance side, all the way to the complex side, that's a wide gap. Few people live on both sides. The majority of the people, the majority of the attention that you want, if you're trying to be an influencer or build your business, it lands in between those two. And that is going to be defined as the simplicity gap. Are you able to share your idea with the majority of people? Because if you can, that's whenever you start understanding that simplicity is the key. And so let's continue. The power of the distiller. A genius creates a simpler scale. The person who makes the complex feel obvious is the one who leads. And so is that you? Do you wish this to be you? That you can tell someone a very difficult thing, teach them. In other words, maybe it took you 12 hours to learn something, but you can say, hey, give me 30 minutes with you, because after studying and doing it and using it and understanding it for 12 hours, I understand where all of the fluff and all the extra stuff was. And then now I made it, instead of 150 steps, I made it into 20 steps. Give me 30 minutes and I can teach you, which leads to why that type of person, the simplifier, right, is the one who leads. Now, the intellectual person is needed. And that intellectual person, it might be a separate individual who does this, who's able to do this. And that's not what I'm trying to sell today. What I'm trying to talk to you about today is how about it's you that goes from the beginning, from not knowing, right, from ignorance all the way to complexity, and you specialize in simplicity, therefore making you a complete package as a leader. But where you build and connect the most is in that middle gap that I talked about when you think about the 3-tier thing that I said a while ago, right? And so another thing to consider when talking about this topic between genius and a simple someone who's can think very simply, easy to understand. And here's the other one, the ego of jargon, the ego of language. We often hide behind complex language because it protects our status. The bigger words you use, your assumption is the smarter you are. The more people that don't understand you because you're so in depth, it in your head elevates you, but in reality, in that atmosphere, in the area where you're all breathing the same air, you have separated yourself from those who need a simple explanation. Their mind can help them understand it more complex, but simple would work better for them. But you have to ask yourself, how do you sound, right? What language do you use? And why are you scared to connect in a more simpler way when you're describing something? Simplicity requires the humility to let go of looking smart, sounding smart, so that whoever the audience is can actually become smart with you. You bring them in to the conversation. But if your jargon is crazy and complex, you put a wall around you and no one is welcome in what you're trying to share. But again, that's a question that you have to ask for yourself, right? Is that how do you communicate? How are you in a room when you're talking? Who do you want to be? The translation tax, every time you fail to clarify, you tax your listeners' energy. Eventually, they stop paying attention because the cost, here we go, of understanding you is too high. You're insulting their intelligence because if someone doesn't understand the complexity or the jargon that you're sharing, it doesn't say how smart they are. It only says, it says how disconnected you are and how you can share what you have learned. The way we learn something, typically when it's business or systems and processes, the way you first learn it is not the way that it's always going to be. As it evolves, it becomes simpler to understand, to teach, and to repeat. And that's just common sense. And so the translation tax ends up costing, and people will not pay attention. Don't forget, you're listening to Timeless Wisdom, Modern Mind with your host, Sam Escobar. Today's topic is the sophistication of simple. Funny enough, as I read the title, sophisticated, that's a long word. And it's very taxing on my mind when I read it, that it kind of, I've mispronunciated it a few times. I could simplify it, but it's like the joke. The title is in the joke, and the key is to keep it simple is better. And so let's move on to simple or ways that we can use it in different environments, maybe work and social and personal. So at work, when we pitch a project, skip the acronyms, explain the why as if you're talking to a friend over coffee. This is difficult if you don't have coffee with friends, if you don't pride yourself on just having normal conversations. You don't always have to be the teacher. You don't always have to be the more intellectual. And if you are those two things, pitching a project in this form, right? And then answering the why and then just making it feel like a normal conversation with your friends is going to be difficult. But again, that is the wisdom today. Maybe this is the call for you. Maybe you can get more sales, close more deals, gain more clients because you shift your mind going from very complicated to a little more simple. And so socially in a debate, instead of using big words to win, outsmarting, making them feel dumb, or making whoever's listening make them think that you're just smart because of the words that you're using, but they really don't know what the meaning is. How about we use clear analogies to find common ground, making connections better? When we understand ourselves on a simple level, there's a connection that's being built because I can say I understand you and you can say you understand me, and we're having conversations around understanding each other, not a conversation where I'm trying to understand you. Every question I'm asking is taxing on me, and I'm just trying to pay the cost to elevate myself to where you are, which is more often than none is never going to happen. And so also in your personal life, when we're teaching a child a life lesson, if you can make it stick, here we go. This is hard. And this is where you can identify what kind of thinker you are. In one sentence, if you can't teach and make it stick in one sentence, one phrase, you haven't found the heart of the lesson yet. You're just trying to overthink it, you're overcomplicating it, and so on. When it's simple, it's easier. When it's easier, it's because it's simple. And so I'm going to give you 3 quotes. Maybe I'll put these in the description. I think it just helps whenever we're discussing or you're listening to this and you tell your friend, hey, you got to listen to this podcast. Listen to this episode about comparing genius and the gap between genius and simplicity, right? Or the gap between ignorance and complexity. And in between is simplicity. And so here's one. Simplicity is the final stage of sophistication. Here's another quote. Don't build a pedestal, build a bridge. Don't want the spotlight, but light up the whole room. Don't just entertain your brain, but entertain the brains that are all in the room, right? Here's another one. A genius in a sealed box is just a light bulb that failed its purpose. You do what you want with those. You do what you want with those quotes. But I think that it's pretty good. So let's do some action steps. Okay, the 10-year-old test. Try to explain your current biggest work project to a 10-year-old. If they look bored, you're still stuck in complexity, right? Or do it with your friend. It doesn't have to be a kid, but tell someone something that's going on and just read their body language and see if you can make it somewhat entertaining and simple to understand. Then that's when they can help you. If it's a problem, they can help you resolve it, as opposed to cutting you off because they're bored. And then here you go. We're talking about language. So do a language audit, right? Record yourself speaking for 5 minutes and count how many industry-specific words you use that a stranger wouldn't know. See how many words you use that just try to elevate you and separate you from those that are listening. Because I feel like you find yourself around more people who don't understand the jargon, the industry-specific type things that you say. find out what the simple word for that is. A designer uses designer-y type words. A programmer uses programmer. Architect, the engineer, they use certain words. And when they do, you're saying two things. First of all, you're saying, I don't want you involved in my conversation because I'm better, smarter than you. Or second, you just don't realize it. And this is you. This is the pod to tell you to maybe change it. Write a list down of maybe the industry specific words, and then figure out what it means just in layman's terms. And that's just like an audit on your language or your jargon. The one sentence challenge, like we said a while ago, summarize your core belief in 15 words or less. That is hard to do, but let me give you one. Here's one of my core beliefs, and then you can count it off. I'm going to lose count, but one of my core beliefs is that there is power in storytelling, and that story is yours, and learn how to share it with others. Period. Boom. Because I believe in storytelling, and when someone in that capture their attention, then I can go off on whatever I want to talk about around that subject. But see, you try to do that. A one sentence challenge, summarize one of your core beliefs in 15 words or less. And when you do that, now you're able to share it when an opportunity shows itself, and you won't have to take 5 to 10 minutes from someone to explain it. You understand it and share it in a short and simple way. And before your next talk or meeting, ask, am I speaking to be heard or speaking to be understood? What a deep question. Ask yourself that. And like in every episode, I like to give a biblical connection. And don't forget, you can always dig deeper to find more wisdom, whether it be on the first half or this part, which is the closing part of the episode. We're going to look at 1 Corinthians 4:9. So it is with you, unless you speak intelligible words with your tongue, how will anyone know what you are saying? You will just be speaking into the air. God is the ultimate translator. The concept of the incarnation is the ultimate bridge. The infinite God made himself simple / he made himself a human so we could finally understand the complex nature of his love. Now that is complicated, don't get me wrong. That is very theological, very deep, but it speaks to this whole idea. At Mars Hill in Acts 17, he translated the gospel into the language of Greek poets to reach the philosophers. Again, a shift in the jargon. It just wasn't from a God perspective, right? Like I can only imagine that language. He simplified it in Greek for the Greek poets so that they could reach the philosophers. In his early zeal as Saul, his complex adherence to the law made him a barrier to God's grace rather than a bridge. He shifted and changed and became a lot softer in his character, right? More simple. And so here's the result. By becoming all things to all people in 1 Corinthians 9:22, he built a bridge that allowed the gospel to cross from a local sector to a global movement. And the reason it doesn't, and there is complicated parts in the Bible, don't get me wrong, but when you look at the Psalms or certain stories or certain examples that Jesus uses, he goes from sophisticated, complex to very simple and easy to understand because he did it with stories. And so that is today's episode. The simplification of simple. The sophistication of simple. I have complicated the title enough that I keep pronunciating it wrong, but that just emphasizes how important it is to keep things simple, no matter how smart you are or how you're barely starting something. Understanding is being able to give it back, to teach it. And so I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I am your host, Sam Esquivel. Thank you for tuning in to Timeless Wisdom, Modern Mind. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like, and share with your friends. I hope you've enjoyed the previous episodes. I'm looking forward to the episodes coming up. I've already read a few more books. I've already listened to a few more podcasts. And there's just plenty of wisdom that I have taken in. And I'm going to do my best to continue to simplify it and give it right back to you. Y'all have a good one.